The big weekend show is back, and we have a Fox News alert. A U.S. Navy destroyer taking out drones belonging to Iranian-backed fighters in the Middle East. And there are questions about the intended target of those drones as the attacks from Iran proxies unfolded in the Red Sea. Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson live at the White House. Lucas, any word from the president tonight on the attacks on U.S. forces?
None tonight. He's actually at the Kennedy Center hosting the Kennedy Center honors, but that's not. I'm not going to get into that one this evening. Now, the U.S. Central Command says the U.S.S. Carney, that's a guided missile destroyer, shot down 3 drones today in the Red Sea that were launched from Iranian-backed proxy forces in Yemen. And this was a complex attack, Pentagon officials say. It lasted over 7 hours. There were 4 other attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea. 3 different missiles hit 3 different commercial ships in the Red Sea. Now, here's how CENTCOM described one of those drones that Carney shot down. It said, quote, "The drone was headed toward Carney, although its specific target is not clear. We cannot assess at this time whether the Carney was the target of those drones." Now, of course, if you're the watch officer standing and watching the Combat Information Center aboard U.S.S. Carney, or the commanding officer on board, and you see a drone or some unknown object heading toward you, you're going to shoot it down. And that's exactly what Carney did. Now, last night, before these attacks in the Red Sea, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, speaking at the Ronald Reagan Institute, spoke about these attacks, and this is what he pledged to do. We spoke about the attacks before this one in the Red Sea, the attacks on U.S. forces. This is what he said.
"We will not tolerate attacks on American personnel. And so these attacks must stop. And until they do, we will do what we need to do to protect our troops and to impose costs on those who attack them."
CENTCOM spokesman, former retired U.S. Army Colonel Joe Pacino, this is how he described what's going on and what the U.S. needs to do.
In order to introduce deterrence, deterrence is in the mind, John. And so in order to introduce deterrence over Iran or over anybody, you need 2 things. You need to demonstrate you have capability to inflict harm. Second thing is your adversary has to understand you have the will to inflict harm, inflict pain. And right now, Iran does not think that this administration has the will to do so.
Now, there have been at least 75 attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East since the middle of last month. It's notable, guys, the Pentagon does not count any attacks on U.S. warships at sea in this number. Now, the U.S. military says tonight that it's killed some Iranian-backed proxy fighters tonight in Iraq via a drone strike. The Pentagon says that attack was done out of self-defense because those Iranian-backed fighters were about to launch a rocket or drones at some of the U.S. forces in Erbil in northern Iraq. That's the Kurdish-controlled area. David.
Lucas, have there been any reports from CENTCOM or statements or changes in ship movements? We have 2 strike groups there, very crowded bodies of water.
No, there's not, but it's notable U.S.S. Carney she's been very busy lately. Of course, last week she shot down a drone fired from the Iranian-backed proxy forces in Yemen. And, of course, last month, remember, Carney shot down dozens of cruise missiles and drones launched from Yemen. It's notable the U.S. military has not carried out any strikes in Yemen against these Iranian-backed proxy forces, despite shooting down that $32 million Reaper drone, if you remember that last week. So a lot of attacks coming out of Yemen. So far, there's been no counterattacks there from U.S. forces, David.
All right. Thank you so much for all of that information, Lucas. I want to go to really where you're leading us here, which is what the U.S. should do next. Take a listen. This is the former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta.
I would be much more aggressive about going after those that attack our U.S. forces.
Do you think to date that our response has been too soft?
I think it's been a little bit too selective. I mean, we hit some ammo dumps, we hit some other targets. I want to go after those who are firing missiles at our troops and make sure they understand that when they fire a missile, they're going to die.
The U.S. lost that $32 million Reaper drone. That was just last month right there off the coast of Yemen. So what are some of the military options the U.S. has to respond?
Molly, of course, you have the U.S.S. Dwight D. Eisenhower on station now in the Persian Gulf, as well as its strike groups. You got dozens of Super Hornets on board, strike fighters aboard, Ike. You have, Tomahawk cruise missiles that can be launched from the different escort ships, destroyers, and the cruiser in the Eisenhower strike group. You also have F-15s, F-16s, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, who have carried out some of those airstrikes. There's been about 6 now so far in Iraq and Syria. Certainly, a menu of options is available to President Biden, should he choose one of them.
Lucas, it's Kennedy. I have a question for you. So, fortunately for some of these private commercial vessels, the U.S.S. Carney was able to aid them and shoot down some of those incoming drones. What kind of security do these commercial ships tend to have themselves?
I'm sure the insurance rates have gone up, Kennedy, on those vessels passing through the Red Sea. Some of them do employ security forces. A lot of times they don't. In fact, we heard just last week that one of those commercial vessels was boarded from Somali pirates. Obviously, the Gulf of Aden, if you go through that Bab el-Mandeb Strait, if you have the map up there, some very dangerous waters. You have Somalia to the south, Yemen to the north. Very dangerous waters, pirate-infested. And what happened in that case is the crew actually went into a safe room, just like we're hearing in Israel of those safe rooms. There's a safe room aboard those ships. They hid. In that case, Carney was actually able to assist then and drove away the pirates, actually detained and arrested them.
I'm the captain now.
Hey, Lucas, Charlie here. Very basic question. So what can you give us a sense of how big these drones are and what exactly the Navy is using to shoot them down with?
That's a good question there, Charlie. Of course, the Carney's using SM-2 missiles. Those go for about $2 million a pop. So those are very expensive missiles you're using to destroy what are relatively crude drones. And just yesterday, actually, CENTCOM published a photo showing a large Iranian drone. Looked like a small Cessna flying near Eisenhower. Many of our viewers were wondering why that drone wasn't shot down.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.